What do you think of when I mention the most comfortable car in the world? Maybe a Bentley, a Rolls-Royce, or even a Mercedes Benz. But what if I told you that the picture should include this car, the 2024 Audi S8? And at this point, you might be wondering how an Audi sports sedan could possibly be mentioned in the same sentence as a Bentley or a Rolls-Royce. But what you may not know is that the S8 actually has one of the most advanced suspension systems that money can buy. And in this video, I'm going to show you how the S8 is actually one of the most comfortable cars in the world. So first, a little bit of background on the S8. This is actually a sportier version of Audi's A8. It's their full-size luxury sedan, the biggest one that they make. It competes against things like the Mercedes S-Class and the BMW 7 Series. Now, every version of the S8 comes with air suspension as standard on all four corners of the car, giving you a very pillowy ride. But this particular S8 has an optional extra. It's called Audi Predictive Active Suspension, but honestly, I think they should have called it Magic Ride, because what this suspension can do is pure insanity. I'm going to try to explain rather simply how the suspension works. So basically, you get electromechanical actuators on all four of the wheels. Those can lift or lower the vehicle by up to 3.3 inches, and they can do so very quickly in just half a second. And the best way to illustrate this is by opening the doors. This car actually has a feature where if you open any of the doors, it's going to lift the car up very quickly, making it easier to get in and out of. At this point, you might be saying, Jared, I've seen plenty of cars with air suspension that can lift or lower to make the car easier to get in and out of. Why is the S8 so special? Well, you saw this car lifts up really quickly, and the way that it's able to do that is with something called a 48-volt mild hybrid system. Now, cars usually run on 12 volts, but a 48-volt system is able to run current much faster, powering that suspension to work really quickly. Now, on a car without that, the air suspension might take 10 or even 15 seconds to raise up, but on the S8, as soon as you open the door, boom, it lifts up and you can get in and out. And not only does the suspension make it easier to get in and out of the car when it's in this lifted state, but there's another cool feature that the S8 has, and that is if it detects that you're about to get T-boned, it can actually lift the suspension even further than the position that you see it in. That makes it so that when the car does hit you, it's going to hit you down here where you have more body protection rather than up here where you could be more susceptible to bodily injury. So now we're going to test out the Predictive Active Air Suspension in practice. I am on one of my local streets right now that is just littered with speed bumps. There are speed bumps every 20 seconds, but in the S8, I'm barely going to notice them. Now, those electromechanical actuators are going to lift the body in preparation for going over the speed bump. So I'm rolling over it at about 30 miles an hour, and I barely felt that it was there. In a normal car, you would have this jolt as you kind of went over it. But in this, nothing. How is it doing that, you might ask? Well, the S8 has a camera up front, and it's using that camera to read the road, so it knows speed bump, prepare the suspension, and make sure that the occupants barely notice. This is one of the most comfortable cars that you can buy. Maybe a Rolls-Royce is slightly more comfortable, and Mercedes does have a suspension rather similar to this, but this is definitely top 3 suspensions on sale today. Maybe the one that's in the new Panamera, which is very similar to this, but obviously a little bit newer because it's just coming out, will be better than this, but I haven't sampled that yet. So the S8 is definitely in the top 3 most comfortable cars that I've ever driven. And now the speed humps are about to get even worse. They're a little bit taller and they're actually made of cobbles. But again, I barely felt that. The cars in front of me have to really slow down over these, and they are still bouncing up and down. But I think, honestly, in the S8, the bigger the bump and the faster you take it, I'm not even going to brake now. I think that even makes it smoother. You don't have to slow down for speed bumps. This is magic. But speed bumps only give you a fraction of a second to feel how amazing the suspension is on the Audi S8. For a more punishing test, I've brought it to Park Avenue in Winter Park, Florida. Now, this is a very old section of Central Florida. There is a lot of money here, so the S8 fits perfectly in place. And the reason why I brought it here is because Park Avenue is paved entirely in cobblestones. If you have an uncomfortable car here, you're gonna feel it. So as I bring the S8 up to speed here, the cobblestones should be jostling us around like crazy, but they just aren't. The suspension can actually read the road 18 times per second, and then the suspension can respond in fractions of a second, in milliseconds. So as I'm going over these rough imperfections in the road, the car is reading it, it's telling the suspension what to do. I just went over a manhole cover, barely felt it. Just went over some train tracks, barely felt that as well. The camera is moving around quite a bit. That's just my mound. I promise you, in here, I'm barely feeling this road. And I'm in fact so confident in how well the S8 takes bumps that I've got another test lined up for it, but I can't really do it from the driver's seat. You find me now in the back seat of the S8 because this is where you really want to be in this car. We have something called the rear seat comfort package for passenger. Now, there is a way that you can fit 5 people back here and just have a normal bench seat, but this is the most luxurious way to order your S8. For a paltry $5,900, you get this amazing center console here at the back. And as you can see, just like an airplane, I actually have my own fold-out tray tables. That means I can enjoy a nice beverage back here. I have a little touch screen here on the center console. I can control my heated and ventilated seats. I can control the climate. I can even get a massage back here. It is truly the most luxurious way to travel in an S8. But here's the real reason why I've hopped into the backseat. I am so confident in how smooth the S8 rides. I have my Yeti here with the lid on. What I'm gonna now do is I'm going to confidently remove the lid on my beverage while driving over cobblestones, and it is not spilling. That is the miraculous nature of the S8. And as my driver comes to a stop, the force of the car stopping doesn't even move the cup at all. That's how smooth this car is. Chauffeur, I'm out of champagne. We need to go get more, please. Thank you. This is unbelievable. I can sit, I can have a beverage. If I want, we can run through the drive-thru. I can have a whole meal back here. And again, I can just enjoy that amazing suspension. It's so great. So if you're looking to buy an S8, you gotta go $6,000 for the Predictive Active Suspension. It's well worth the money. Now, this 4-passenger comfort seat for $5,900, it's amazing. Perhaps you want your S8 to be a little more practical and actually have 5 seats. There is a 5-seat version for $4,200. You don't get the amazing tray tables, but it will make the S8 a little bit more useful if you need to put 5 people in the car. And now that I've fully gone over how the Predictive Active Suspension makes the S8 a more comfortable car, let's talk about how it makes it a more dynamic car as well, because this is an S8 after all. This is one of Audi's sport products. So what I'm gonna do is put the car into its dynamic mode. I'm gonna put my foot on the brake, and then I'm gonna floor it, activating launch control. Ready? Build up the revs, let go. Whoa! Oh! That was 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.4 seconds. This car is an absolute rocket ship. It's powered by Audi's 4-liter twin turbocharged V8 engine, producing a whopping 563 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque. So this car, it scoots, man. Woohoo! And the most amazing part is that when you're accelerating, the Predictive Active Suspension is still doing its job. Whereas the suspension in its Comfort Plus setting is trying to make the car as soft as possible. Now, when you're in dynamic mode and you go to floor it, it's controlling the motions, the body motions of the car during acceleration and braking. So there's not as much force on your body when you come to a stop hard, or you accelerate. I mean, the car is still moving incredibly fast, but it's not rocking back and forth the way that most cars would do. It's so cool. And all of that power is going out through a buttery smooth 8-speed automatic transmission to quattro all-wheel drive and Audi staple, meaning that those launches are gonna be near perfect almost every time. But here's where the suspension gets really tricky. As I start getting into the corners here, what it can do is it can actually prime the outside part of the suspension and lean into the corners by up to 3 degrees. Imagine it's like a motorcyclist leaning into the corners, helping them go around it faster. This is a massive car. I should be rocking side to side as I take these corners, but I'm not. That's the magic of the Audi Predictive Active Suspension. And then when you combine that with the fact that this car has rear wheel steering, it just feels so much more nimble than it should. This might be an S8, but I might as well be driving an S3. This car just shrinks around you. It's like absolute magic. So that was the 2024 Audi S8. Prices for this car start at just over $123,000, so it is quite expensive. Now you could get an A8, which has a lot of this car's technology, but unfortunately you cannot get the predictive adaptive suspension on the A8 anymore. You have to step up to the S8. Now the suspension is gonna add $6,000 to the price. You're gonna pay another $5,900 for that amazing rear seat package, and then this car has some optional extras, including a black optic package and some other goodies that bring the total price to over $150,000. That might sound like a ton of money, but as I've mentioned, the S8 is one of the most comfortable cars that you can buy. It's also, I believe, the most dynamic, fun to drive sedan in this class. I have more fun driving it than a BMW 7 Series or a Mercedes S-Class, and I know it might not be the most modern of that trio, but the S8 is still one of my favorites. If you enjoyed this review of the 2024 Audi S8, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. And if you want to read more about the 2024 Audi S8, be sure to check out carbuzz.com. I'll see you next time.